Hey, what's up, y'all? Dan back at you with another video, and I know this video is a tad bit late, but I wanted to give myself some time to really formulate my opinions and my thoughts on what I think about the Crotas in Raid. I wanted to include the contest challenge mode experience. I wanted to include the post contest mode experience, and I wanted to include the loot, the replayability, and just everything that it has to do with this raid and long term how I think this raid will go. Only thing left is to see how this raid plays on master mode, but I do want to touch that when I talk about contest challenge mode. And I also think personally that I've done the raid enough now that I can have a very solid expert opinion on the raid. I've done a lot of clears, I've done a lot of helps, I've taken dozens of people through. Only thing left me to do is a couple of my low man challenges and flawless and get the master seal done. Otherwise, I've done the raid enough to figure out where I stand on this raid and its quality and replayability. This is just going to be a bunch of just non-scripted stuff, just straight thoughts. I have a couple points and let's just get into it. Contest mode, first off, I do think personally was a better experience than Root of Nightmares, although I do not think that is a bad thing. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not contest mode for Root of Nightmares was too easy, to which that I will also agree. However, I will say pretty much everything, not including Crota's End, not including Crota specifically, I do think was a bit still too easy. What I mean by that is I didn't ever feel that I was in a big threat in regards to enemies attacking me, and even Crota was probably the only thing that I felt was a big threat because of us all having to get close to him. His little AoE attack was pretty brutal, reminded me a lot of the Lightblade boss, and I think his melee attack was pretty brutal on contest mode. Even post contest mode, his melees are still pretty brutal, which is one of the things I think has been dialed in pretty perfectly personally. Only thing that of course can survive all of his attacks is of course Banner of War, but that's something I want to talk about for another video. It is nice to see that it only takes, even on non-contest mode, a couple of slams from him to break any well, even at 100 resilience. I think with a stag it takes 3 hits, without a stag it takes 2 hits, but regardless, it is nice that well isn't just the end all be all, just set it down and then you're good. That being said, I know a lot of people kind of cheat their way around the well and placing it on top of him. That is a cheese, but it's a cheese that kind of, I don't mind. It's whatever. It is nice that well is not very necessary for that encounter, but it'd be nice to see us not have to use well in that situation, but using swords the way we do. I understand having to do what is required in order to make it work. So personally, the only parts that caught my team up and we got us stuck for a few hours both times was Crota, and a lot of our deaths were just from Crota himself, either from the slams, either from his AoE attack and us just not having spatial awareness of where he was. Other than Crota himself, I do think that the entire raid was a bit too easy still on challenge mode for my own personal feelings. But hopefully, they can tune that in even more. It is a step in the right direction. It felt more threatening than it did for Root of Nightmares, and I hope they can do a better job in the final shape. Contest mode was pretty good. Crota was whatever. He's Crota. He came back with a vengeance, and I do think they did overall a really solid job making a really solid contest mode experience. One of the biggest issues with having to do the raid twice within 24 hours, now 48 hours, is that if you do not do both completions, you get no rewards. I think one of the best things that they did was allowing people to get the raid exotic within the first, just getting a clear on contest mode. Very reminiscent of, when you get a world's first completion, you and your entire fire team got the raid exotic. I'm glad that they brought that back in a little of a sense, using that system and making it to where if you can complete the raid within the first 48 hours, you get the raid exotic is really nice. That being said, the emblem is cool, and I'm glad that people who were able to get one completion were able to earn something out of it. So people who wanted to just go ahead and get it could just spend the 48 hours, just get a single clear, and not have to worry about going back and doing the sword breaker play, whatever you want to call it, sword play triumph run. I hope that they do something similar to that with Final Shape. I don't know what that could be, but they probably will just make it be an emblem, since you only will need to do the raid once. Post contest mode, I do think that unlike Root of Nightmares, that Crota is not a pushover as easily as he was in D1. He, is still a little bit of a pushover, but is not as dramatic as, say, Nezarec or, other raids in the past. It's nice that he's still threatening on non-contest mode, and it's nice that he still just deletes wells on non-contest mode. But as always, everything else becomes absolutely a cakewalk and expected to just see everyone just breezing through content, breezing through just enemies hitting you and it not being an issue. And that's expected. And I hope that they do something about post-contest mode in the future, upping the difficulty a little bit and making it just not feel as, as much of a breeze as it has been in the last couple of raids. Next up, I want to talk about the loot. I do think, unlike Root of Nightmares, Just like Root of Nightmares, I do think the loot is one of the strongest factors of this raid. The loot in Root of Nightmares was phenomenal. It had a lot of really niche perks, a lot of new cool perks, a lot of really cool combinations, and a lot of the archetypes were really, really strong archetypes in the game. Once again, even the 180 hand cannon known as Word of Crota, all of those things, every single weapon is really, really cool. It gets some pretty unique rolls, and all of the new perks are really strong. One of my favorite being Sword Logic and Enlightened Action. Those are my two favorite new perks that came to the game this season. And it's nice to see that all of the weapons will be craftable as always, but it's nice to see that all those weapons and their perk combinations make me excited to try to craft in the future. Thumbs up on the loot. Loot is really good. I like the loot. Well done, Bungie, on your loot. My only fear now and hope is that the master loot is really solid. Hopefully it goes like time loss weapons and not like Root of Nightmares weapons, where it's just once, every week or something. My only issue is to figure out if they can make a better system for, master loot. Last off, it's got to be replayability. Not including the Abyss, which I think is one of the worst changes to the entire system of Crota then. Personally, I think the raid has a really solid replayability. The Abyss opening is a bit too brutal, with any person dying too soon in the route basically makes it be a wipe. The door opening takes way too long. The capturing of the totems and the place and all that, the chalice thing, takes a bit too long in this encounter. It would have been nice to see a way to enlighten yourself after dumping the chalice off or something, or just having a section where if someone dies they respawn higher up, closer up, I don't know, something. But it is way too punishing to have someone die, especially early. Granted, for such a long encounter already, the encounter takes easily 10 minutes on a clean run, and the pendulums and everything that they add on top of it, and having someone just randomly die early is just it's a killer. The rest of the raid is pretty solid. The pacing is really good for bridge encounter. Air Ute is easily one of my favorite encounters ever in the game. I think it's a phenomenal encounter. I like the pacing of it, a lot of ad density. Really good update. That's the encounter that I think was the best brought from D1 to D2. And then Crota, of course, is a really good encounter. It takes another encounter just like Oryx and Kingsfall that used to be very time limited, that was no way to speed up really, and all this kind of stuff, has made it to where it's one of the fastest encounters if your team is skilled enough to do it. You grab all the swords, pass the lightnings and all that stuff, get to DPS, and then right as the DPS is over, you can just focus on just fast, like killing everything and getting right back to DPS really quickly again. It's really phenomenal. I like it. Being able to use the sword still and flipping it on his head just like they did with Oryx, icing on the cake. Very fitting to do the same flip that they did with his father as they're doing with his son. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid raid. I think a lot of us, including myself, was very underwhelmed that Crota was coming back instead of Wrath of the Machine. And while that's still the case, they have made a fantastic job with making Crota a viable D2 base raid. And this is probably the third reprise raid in pretty much in a row with Vogue, Kingsfall, and now Crota that has easily made my top 5 favorite raids in the game. Some of the best raids that they have done are their reprise raids, and it's not nostalgia anymore. It is just consistency with just taking a raid, flipping it on its head, and making it relevant in D2 standards. All in all, I think Crota's Inn has had a fantastic turnaround. I don't think anyone is expecting this to be a strike or a dungeon anymore. Even if, a skill team can knock it out in 40-45 minutes like I've done a few times. The prize raid is some of the best raids they've done, and I hope that they can, do Wrath of the Machine the same way in the future. Thanks so much for watching this video, and, if you have any feelings about it, let me know in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.